This video examines what we should know about carbon. Carbon is a non-metallic element of group 4A in the periodic table. Although widely distributed in nature, carbon is not particularly plentiful. It makes up only about 0.025% of the Earth's crust. Its valence is such that it forms more compounds than all the other elements combined. Carbon is the basis of all life on Earth. It is not only locked up in forests, it is the basis of all organic matter, plants, animals, birds, bugs, fish, and human beings. Every day, nature releases carbon into the atmosphere from volcanoes, bushfires, and the breath of animals. When our bodies burn carbohydrates to provide energy, these react with the oxygen we breathe to create carbon dioxide. Nature actually creates 23,000 times more carbon dioxide each day than all man-made sources. Carbon dioxide is a heavy gas, and there is little or no carbon dioxide at high altitudes, which is why trees are scarce on the tops of high mountains. The amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere at sea level is generally about 295 parts per million, or of every million molecules of air, 295 are carbon dioxide. Have you ever considered what this looks like as a fraction? This tiny fraction, only 1 part in 23,000, is man-made. In fact, the amount of man-made carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is less than the error or variation allowed in our measurement of carbon dioxide. Man-made atmospheric carbon dioxide has been blamed for global warming, but this assumption has been based on flawed science and is one of the greatest scientific blunders of all time, and has been turned into a fraud of monumental proportions. Anthropogenic global warming has become a travesty of science and an insult to human intelligence. A chart produced in 1998 by Michael Mann was published in Nature magazine, even though it had not been peer-reviewed, and showed only 1,000 years of climate, with an apparent sharp increase since about 1700. The fact that the period before 1700 was known as the Maunder Minimum, or the Little Ice Age, was totally ignored. To be truly accurate, the chart should have included the period before the Little Ice Age and have covered at least 2,000 years. If we look at a 2,000-year chart, we see that today's temperatures are not higher than the historical average. The obvious question is why, if the science is so wrong, do so many climatologists support the concept? The answer, of course, is money. Emails that showed scientists in England were suppressing data that did not support their claim have been overlooked by governments eager to exploit the opportunity to levy an additional tax. In Australia, with a population of only a little over 20 million, the government expects to hand over $10 billion to clean energy technology. I'm a believer in renewable energy, but as a cheaper and more sustainable technology, and not because of false scientific claims. It is my firm belief that taxing carbon will result in our renewable energy being made more expensive because it no longer has to compete with a cheaper alternative. We also need to ascertain whether atmospheric carbon is actually dangerous or out of control. We all know that carbon dioxide is necessary for plant growth, but what do higher levels of carbon dioxide actually do for plant growth? Some enterprising biologists have undertaken experiments that test the effect of greater levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. They created 2 artificial environments, one with normal levels of carbon dioxide, 295 parts per million, and one with increased levels at 383 parts per million. What is truly interesting is the performance of crops in dry or drought-affected areas. Wheat, for example, showed an increase of 11% in dry conditions, but only a 4% improvement in good conditions. Oranges and their trees were over 1/3 more productive, and timber in young pine trees grew a staggering 72% faster. The greater the level of carbon dioxide, the more rapidly it is absorbed by plants. It is apparent from this that much of the hype about carbon dioxide emissions is just that, hype. It poses no serious threat to our long-term survival. On December the 13th, 2007, 100 scientists jointly signed an open letter to Ban Ki-moon, Secretary-General of the United Nations, requesting they cease the man-made global warming hysteria and settle down to helping mankind better prepare for natural disasters. The final signature was from the President of the World Federation of Scientists. Deforestation has also been claimed as a cause for increased carbon dioxide, but grass and crops actually absorb more carbon than forests because they grow more rapidly. They are also more flammable, so can release carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere more rapidly. One of the scientists involved in Australia's original climate change calculations, Dr. David Evans, is a carbon accountant who was employed to work out the amount of carbon emissions. He realised that there were serious errors in the claims and has since become a critic of the false climate claims. New evidence also suggests that climate change is not the largest threat to the planet. It does not threaten all life on Earth. It's not the end of humanity. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the most authoritative assessment of global scientific opinion, now estimates in 2011 do nothing and continue with business as usual, mean global temperatures will rise by 1.8 degrees Celsius by 2100 at the low end and 4 degrees Celsius at the top end. Added to this, NASA scientists detected warming equivalent to that on Earth on both Mars and Jupiter, indicating that solar activity was probably the cause of temperature variations. Solar scientists believe that the Sun is following a pattern of sunspots similar to the one that preceded the Little Ice Age. The chance of a new Little Ice Age is just as much a possibility as is global warming. In fact, global temperatures have remained constant for the last decade, with some regions actually experiencing record low temperatures. In central Victoria, where I live, 2010 was the first time since records have been kept that we experienced over 200 consecutive days below 20 degrees Celsius. And in 2011, parts of the USA experienced record snowfalls. Planetary weather is behaving in a manner that is unstable to a degree not seen in recorded history. Storms, floods, tornadoes, droughts, and all manner of devastation, but we concentrate on carbon to the exclusion of all other factors. Australia is about to introduce a tax on carbon, but it will only affect locally produced goods. The thing that is ignored, but should be taxed, is imports. It would be logical to tax the thousands of tonnes of marine diesel and jet fuel used to bring these goods to a remote country like Australia. Locally produced products are always brought to market with far less pollution than goods transported thousands of kilometres. In addition to carbon dioxide emissions, mankind has been responsible for increasing to a far greater extent another greenhouse gas, water vapour. In the last 50 years, since the development of the passenger jet, cloud cover, particularly over the North Atlantic, has increased well over 10%. No accounting has been done to establish the effect of this on climate models, but of course there would be an outcry if they tried to tax rainfall. I do believe we should work toward clean renewable energy, not based on false data, but on realistic economic analysis. All we require from our politicians and scientists is the truth.